TVOT. The last panel of the day, and I am very pleased to introduce Daisy Whitney. Daisy is the moderator. She's from New Media Minute, and of course you've seen her many times. She's an authoress and all-around very well-respected journalist, and she's here to moderate Programming Discovery, Personalization, and the TV of Tomorrow, and I've given you a very difficult time to moderate, but thank you very much. They'll all be on video somewhere when we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, and it is a pleasure to be here. Your conference is a terrific one, so it is an honor to be here. I'm just going to invite all of my speakers to kind of file up on stage. I'm kind of a casual person by nature, so this panel is going to be a little bit casual and interactive, which means I'm not going to read anybody's bios or anything like that. I'm going to just kind of let them just very briefly, and they're not allowed to tell you more than 10 words about their companies. Because I feel like everybody here knows how to use Google, and if you want to learn more about Yidio or Think Analytics or Tribune Media Services, you can all get online and figure that out. I think what I'd really like to do, and what Tracy and I talked about in advance when planning this session, was I love to try to make things as interactive as possible. I feel like these sessions are really here for you guys to get as much out of it as we possibly can. So we've got a little bit of kind of a debate-style presentation today where I've asked everybody to think about a dozen different kind of position statements around the whole idea of discovery of content, discovery of TV programming, discovery of video. And I'm going to just throw it to some of the different folks all throughout. And I invite all of you to ask questions all throughout. You don't have to wait for the 5 minutes of Q&A at the end. You know, after Alex has spoken initially, if somebody wants to weigh in with a quick question, please do so. I will give you the same direction I've given all of the speakers here. I just ask that people be as succinct as possible when asking their questions, and please don't ask a 2-minute question. Try to keep it to about 30 seconds if you can, just so we can kind of keep things going. But yeah, so my goal with this today is really to dive into the topic of how are we going to find content in the future. I think this is a fascinating topic. Personally, I don't even have cable anymore, so I think about it a lot just as a consumer when I'm watching TV, when I'm watching videos, how I've heard about shows, how I've learned about shows, and places that I will never hear about shows because I don't have an on-screen guide anymore and I don't use one. But of course, recommendations are so important in my life now, and word of mouth is so important. So this is a topic that I'm really excited about personally. And basically, the folks that we have here, represent a wide array of companies that are doing, online TV guides, that have engines that are powering on-screen guides for all sorts of service providers. So I have the world's most fascinating presentation. Yeah, see, I'm really talented with Keynote, as you can tell. And I'm just going to put up my first question if I can get to it. Which I can't, but that's okay, because I can read my first question and maybe shut this down, because it doesn't seem to be working. So the first question that, I was discussing this with my husband in advance, like, okay, where do people learn about TV shows and programming? And he goes, well, why isn't it just Google? Isn't that how everyone's going to find out about TV shows? So I want to start with that. I want you guys to talk about, to sort of agree or disagree on whether Google is going to be the hub of programming discovery now and into the future. You're right next to me, Yossi. You get to go first. So just give us your full name. This is a chance for everyone to kind of give their full name and very briefly who they work for.
The full name is Yossi Glick from Gini, and I'm happy to disagree that Google is the right place to find content. To test this idea, try to go to Google and type in the search box the expression, feel good, smart, romantic movie in New York. You can imagine that you will not get anything meaningful out of that search. And the reason is simple, because Google is indexing words. What we believe people actually looking for is meaning. To say that the title is bittersweet or obnoxious boss or race against time, this is something that it's meaningful, and therefore we believe that you need to index content by meaning, and we believe that the right approach is applying some kind of genetics, like applying a Pandora-like concept over movies and TV shows.
Okay. I apologize that I was trying to figure out the presentation.
I can
while you
repeat
were
what I
saying
said.
No, they heard you. That's what matters. So I'm going to go to Michelle. All right, because Michelle and I discussed this over email, and I know you have strong feelings about this as well.
Actually, I originally thought your question was different, but it's still no. And the main reason is that search and discovery or search and recommendations are two different things. Search implies that you know something about what you're looking for. Recommendations are something in front of a television especially that is delivered to you based on patterns of behavior, based on interests that have been communicated. And I'm from Think Analytics. So.
Okay, so Brandon, what are you looking up on your tablet right now?
Just taking quick notes. I think,
Oh, okay, that's all right. You can do that. Are you
be-
looking up a show?
Yeah, exactly.
Google the answer, probably.
I think Google will always be the main starting point. I mean, everyone has in their browser, everyone has a form at the top right. Everyone just out of habit types in a show name or the episode they want to search for, and it goes straight through Google. So yes, I think there'll always be the main HubSpot. Will they be the best for serendipitous discovery or recommendations? Probably not. They could probably do a better job in vertical searches, but I do think they are going to play a key in the start point that lead into these different discovery options, for sure.
Well, I actually think there's two parts to the question also, because first there's discovering the type of content that you want to watch, and kind of to Michelle's point, you have to know about it in order to actually search for it, and Google doesn't really help with that, right? They don't present programming information like an IMDb or People Magazine or your favorite entertainment blog. You need to get it either from a source like that, or either hear it in person from a friend, or see it nowadays on that friend's Twitter feed. So first, there's finding out about the content, and and that tends to be more less about searching and for something specific. Then there's also discovering where you can actually watch that content once you've discovered that you're interested in that content. And again, Google isn't yet first and foremost on the devices that you're using to watch content today. They're for the most part not yet in your living room or on a lot of your companion devices. Of course, they're trying to do that with Google TV, but I think they're getting opposed even for those efforts, because the networks and other folks, they don't want a hub. They don't want to anoint a king in the OTT or online video world, the same way there's been a king in music with Apple and a king in DVDs with Walmart, and those folks exert the type of control that the networks and content owners don't want to see anyone have.
Now, Paul, you're with Clicker, which is part of CBS now. So I want to hear your point of view on this, because I think you obviously have a guide and a hub, but then you've got the network side, which I'm sure are completely separate.
That's the idea. In fact, if we don't keep them separate, we're in big trouble. But I agree in general with several of the panelists. Google's a great place to start if you know what you're looking for. They don't show you structured information, so you have to dive into the results. They show a lot of pirated information, which is not great for publishers. That's usually ranked in the top 10. But several of us compete that have consumer-facing websites compete for SEO into Google, because we want to be that click, and then we can show them the structured information. When it comes to other things that Google does that are very smart, they have their Google TV platform, which is not really being adopted yet, but Android is a very powerful tool at their disposal. It's all over the place. It's on, it's the dominant OS on mobile phones. It's, in a couple years, it might be the dominant OS in tablets. And when we talk to television manufacturers, a lot of these guys are interested in putting at least Android, maybe not Google TV, on their televisions. So, the reason Google does this, obviously, they can't exert influence when they control the platform.
Well, now you've brought up Google TV, which of course I didn't tell anybody to prep on, but that's okay. That's the nature of a conversation. Is this going to fly, Thomas? Because you're on the service provider side a little bit because of the work that you do. So I'd be curious to get your point of view.
Well, I think first on top of Paul, another angle I would like to bring into the discussion with Google is as soon as internet is coming to the living room, I think there is nobody more prepared to have all the information about the content than Google is. I mean, Google, with all the content they own with YouTube and all the companies, they have the best information about the content, what is in the internet. Coming to Google TV, I would say, I think they showed us in the best way how not to do it on TV. I mean, Google TV not even made it to Europe yet, and I think there is a reason for it, and Michelle touched on the topic as well, is I think search and content discovery is something completely different, so you need to think about how to bring content actually to the user rather than only let them do the active work. TV is still a passive paradigm, and it will remain a passive paradigm, and I think that's what Google still has to figure out. But it will also depend on how service providers will, innovate in future, whether Google will become a hub or not. I think that's something to bear in mind as well.
I'd actually just like to contradict that, because I think, yes, they've got, Google has, of course, they've got, the breadth of content out there, but to Paul's point, they're not necessarily the best at providing structured content and organized content, and that's what's going to drive any type of browse experience, which is a possibility for allowing folks to discover something new, seeing related content, seeing recommended content, browsing kind of ontologies and hierarchies and such, and that's not yet Google's strength.
Okay, I want to go ahead and open this question to the audience. Is there anyone, and you don't have to have questions, but if you do, that'd be great. Does anybody want to challenge any of my panelists? Does anybody just want to throw out another point of view on this sort of whole topic of the role that Google is going to play in programming discovery? Don't be shy, but if you are shy, I'll go to the next question. Harold.
Is it really a question of Google having a problem with content discovery, or is it the other silos not really feeling that they're part of an ecosystem? Like, I was an early Google TV user, as Daisy knows, and one of my frustrations was I go onto the Google TV, and the promise of it was you search for something, episode 1 is up in one place, episode 2 is someplace else, and those metadata repositories weren't talking to each other. Google may have been mistaken in the perception that those metadata registries were going to open themselves up to them, and I think that they all saw the benefit of keeping their silos separate. So is that really the issue, or is it really that that TV is a passive media? Anyone in particular you want to address it to? I'm going to call on Sean then, since we haven't heard from you yet.
I don't have Google TV. I have Apple TV.
Okay, who wants to talk about Google TV? Yossi.
Immediately after Google I/O, Genie was declared as a strategic partner of Google TV. So it really didn't happen. But so I actually have an opinion about some of the weaknesses of Google TV. And yes, one idea is that it could not have a consolidated view of the entire catalog. And technically speaking, this is low-tech. That's actually relatively easy. I wouldn't think that this is the problem. I think the bigger challenge was that it lacks the notion of guide. So you could not really stay couch potato. And having the keyboard on the lap, it's not always the most convenient. I personally believe that discovery is really holistic-wise. It has to take search, browser, recommendation approach, not only recommendation. And I still believe that search has a room, especially when you're talking about iPad, iPhones, people that have the keyboard, and they will want to search. But they will want to search in a way, the way they speak to the friends. So if you speak to your friends and in a particular language, you want to use exactly the same language. That it was a feel-good title, you want to say feel-good. And you want the system to understand that you mean feel-good. And I think that's what's lacking in an application like Google or Google TV.
Okay, we're going to move on to the topic of social media, and I'm hitting you up first, but I'm going to ask the question first. But actually, how many people here watch Glee? That's right, don't be afraid, it's okay. And how many of you see the Twitter feed on, I guess it's on Tuesdays. See, I don't watch it on TV, I watch it on Thursdays or Fridays. But I notice all of the Twitter feeds going by where people are talking about what happened, and that's a place where, as somebody who doesn't have TV, I really got excited and got turned on to Glee. My experience obviously is not unique, but I bring it up because I think that it is something we absolutely have to be prepared for and be thinking about. So the next question that I have for all of us to discuss, and Sean, I'm going to hit you up with it first since you're with Social Guide, is the whole idea of, social media. Will it or will it not be the single biggest determining factor in new shows that consumers discover and learn about?
Hi, I'm Sean Casey from Social Guide. We've created the first real-time social guide for television. I think the number one factor is whether the show's good or not. And that will always be the case. Good shows, people get strongly attracted to them and get involved in them, and then as a result of that, they want to be social about them. So I do think social is going to play a major factor in recommendations and people learning about new shows. But at the end of the day, the show has to be good.
Okay, Michelle, you and I were discussing this as well, and I know that you have strong feelings about recommendation engines versus social. So what's your take?
Well, I don't think it's versus, first off. Social media is okay, so I have to give context with the company real quick.
Yeah, feel free.
Think Analytics does content recommendations for cable, satellite, IPTV. It's more of a white label approach, so we're providing the engine that's going to power the guide. So like the Snowflake, if those of you that saw the NDS Snowflake, we're powering some of the recommendations behind that. So to us, when we're looking at data, information from social media is a component of it. It's a part of it. But there's no way that it's the be-all and end-all for how information is going to be found about new programming or how people are going to find it. Somebody has to find it first. So that person can't possibly hear about it on social media if they haven't found it. And I completely, wholeheartedly agree that if the content's good, people are going to find it.
What's the interplay, Michelle, between recommendation engines and social media? Can they feed each other? Can you filter out or filter through some of what is being talked about to improve recommendations or refine them?
So there's, through a guide, an MSO guide, for instance, or an MSO website, if somebody finds a program and they're going to do a click to record, they can also share, a way that it can be used is it can be shared on a Facebook wall, a tweet can be shared. As far as the input, information, depending on what Facebook Connect or whatever's set up, the information from that can be used as part of the profile as what we call a learn action. It's something that the subscriber has done that's meaningful to a profile. For something like trending topics, if you can get through the noise on Twitter, some of that information can also be used as input into the recommendations.
Brandon, at Yidio, how much of what your I just want to understand the company a little better for the audience and give context before you answer the question, but how much of what you're guiding people through is pure online video, meaning content that's created specifically for the web, and how much is TV content, or is it both?
It's both. I mean, we integrate TV everywhere, just cable content, online base across ad-supported, subscription-supported, VOD, paid. Back onto social, I think social is multifaceted. There's sharing with your friends, there's conversating around it. I think it's taking in what your friends have taken and recommending based on that. I think it's going to be a small, subset of it, a small data set, but in the end, I really think that TV viewing is an inherently private experience outside of live events that most people don't want to share to their friends that they're watching, The Biggest Loser for 5 hours straight on a
Wait,
Sunday.
you mean most people aren't tweeting all the time when they're watching TV?
Yeah, and from our experience, we've had social features. We launched in June 2008. Basically, the core of what we do is aggregate and organize the web's TV and movie and make it easy for the consumer to connect to what they want to watch wherever, whenever, however. And we've just seen that a small subset of people that really want to share their TV experience in the end.
I'd like to just challenge that. What we're doing at Social Guide is we're taking the US TV listing data, and we're capturing all of the social TV discussions that are happening around 160 of the most popular channels in real time. So as a show airs, we're capturing if anybody's talking about that show. In the last 4 months, we've captured 90 million social TV comments from over 14 million people. So there's a ton of people out there now who are constantly saying, either explicitly checking in, which is a very small percentage, the people who are actually explicitly checking in to any of the kind of social TV services, but most of them are just saying, I'm watching this, and they want their friends to know what they're watching. and they're using hashtags, they're using @replies and talking to people on the TV. So there's a lot of that activity happening.
And where you see most of the activity, is that on Twitter?
Yeah, on Twitter.
And what type of events? Is it more live events or scripted series?
Sports is huge,
Yeah.
of course. You know, the social engagement of sports is much higher. But you take a show like Glee, you know, you'll see an average of above 4 comments over the course of the show. Yeah. So it really depends on the show. But you know, early when the show starts, there's a lot of check-in and people saying, "I'm watching this." But then there's also a lot of comments throughout the duration of the program as well.
I did hear on Twitter that last night's Glee was very heartwarming, so I'm really looking forward to enjoying it with my popcorn on Friday night. Not that I'm a person of routine or anything. Yossi, social media, love it or hate it when it comes to discovering new programs?
Maybe because I'm old and fat, so I will have some reservation around that idea. I would say this, I'm not sure who generating. Could Glee be successful without all the buzz? I would say yes. So I think it's the Glee who generating the buzz and not the buzz that helping Glee. So I'm not sure who is helping who in this particular situation. But I would add one more thing.
So, I mean, but what do you mean by that? Could Glee be successful without the buzz? The buzz, specifically for Glee, was generated by viewers, right? They released it at the end of the previous season so that folks would see the premiere, start generating buzz around it. Glee was a success entirely because of their you know, their early adopting viewers who then really got evangelized and got the word out.
So let me ask you this. If there are 100 million people say something on Twitter about Glee, how do I know that I can trust those 100 million people? Because what's really important, in my opinion, if people are tweeting about Glee, I want to consider their opinion only if they're similar to me in terms of my taste. If I have a kinky taste when it comes to TV shows and movies, I want to know people that similar to me that recommend something. So, of course, Glee is a mainstream program. Everybody knows about it. But we have to learn that we need to push our responsibility from monetization point of view is to go beyond the mainstream. We have to push deeper into the channels that people don't always see, deeper into the catalog, and not what's popular. What's popular, the networks are doing excellent job. The studios are doing excellent job. So therefore, social can be effective only if I know that I can trust that particular opinion.
Okay, you guys can all trust my recommendations. Parks and Rec, awesome show. Whoever's not watching it, you need to check that out. I told Harold that. Who wants to anybody have questions on the whole issue of social media? And of course, if you have questions at the end too that we haven't gotten to, I'll take them then. But does anybody want to weigh in and ask questions of the speakers? If not, our next topic is really juicy. Oh, question. I have questions.
So this is kind of, I'm curious about this. So I'm CEO of Miso. So I'm curious, like, do people even want recommendations? Like, just kind of stepping back. I mean, no one needs to tell me that I need to watch Lost, and I already know that I already heard Parks and Recreations like 50,000 times. Like, do I need a tool to go tell me that? You know, I know people like to browse, you know, maybe browsing is actually entertaining in itself. And so I'm curious, like, who wants a recommendation of what to watch tonight? Like, who's waiting for that in this room? And I'm kind of curious.
I'm going to let Thomas and Michelle answer that. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Yeah.
Netflix clearly thought that people wanted recommendations, right?
Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah. I would like to take this one because I'm with Uprick Solutions. We're a venture of Philips Electronics, and during the R&D of our technology, we've conducted field trials actually with our technologies, and we own a paradigm which is called personal channels, where people can create their own virtual channels, and then our rec engine fills automatically these channels with content, so actually just with recommendations, if you want to put it that way. And I mean, the uptake was just amazing. It was kind of, once they know how to use it, and this was a glimpse, it was after 17 days, they actually didn't go back to a TV guide or, you know, to a website to search for the content they're interested in. They just spent 90%, 90, of their time in those personal channels they have created themselves. So I think, yes, they want recommendation is the answer, but the difference, or the big but, is you need to know how to bring the recommendations to the user, And I think it's completely different on the screen you're on. And also back to the social media discussion, I think it's great if you have an iPhone, an iPad, or whatsoever to interact and to tweet and all these sort of things. But as soon as it comes to the big screen, nobody really is interested in having a pop-up, you know, when you're watching with your wife from your email or from your tweet saying from Amazon, thanks for your order, and it was suddenly, you know, a birthday gift for your wife or something like. So personal devices for social media, and I think the social device, television for recommendations, and as simple as possible for the user.
Michelle.
Okay. What he said, what she said. Plus, Amazon claims somewhere, depending on when you heard the stats, they claim something between 20 and 30% of sales come from recommendations. Now, our technology was born out of a need at BSkyB in the UK. It's been live for over 4 years, almost 5, and it's about 9 million satellite subscriber base. People were calling in and leaving the service because they said there was nothing on television. And we all know that that's not true. It wasn't true 5 years ago, it wasn't true 10 years ago. The problem is people can't find it, it's too difficult to find. So we created a recommendations engine to help them solve that problem, to help expand the exposure to the consumer, to the subscriber for the content that was available. So expand, you know, you also hear that people watch between 5 and 13 channels of their hundreds of channels on their subscription. And we, you know, our engine expands that range so they get more genres, more programming, more channels, and they see the value in their packages.
I know Brandon is eager to tackle this question. So I'm going to let you answer, and then we're going to go to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I think recommendations and discovery is kind of multifaceted. I mean, a large majority use case, 70% of the people want to catch up and watch the latest episode and be shown where they can watch the episode. That's a form of discovery, a form of recommendation, showing them when and where and how they can watch it. I think it's, you know, 30% want to discover new shows that they haven't, you know, related to what they have watched or their favorites. So I really think that, you know, that use case of 70% of they just want to get the latest episode, they want to get to the content. At that time, you really don't need a recommendation for some other show because really what you're trying to do is get to the content.
Can I add something here?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I think the term recommendation engine, more or less, it's end of life. What do I mean by that? That when I speak to operators, actually I discover, at least one of the customers we work with, that recently launched a web service powered by Genie, an iPhone application powered by Genie, a connected TV powered by Genie, and soon IPTV powered by Genie. So if you ask them, what is Genie? They will say Genie is a guide engine. What do I mean by that? That in the old days, guide used to be something like HTML with data without engine behind it. And you know, it doesn't make any sense because this is a pretty passive. You always want an engine to power the guide on an ongoing basis so it can become a user-centric, not really something which is pretty static. So in our opinion, the way the industry should evolve, that the industry needs guide engines rather than recommendation engines, which powers all method of discovery, search, browse, and recommendation.
Yeah, and maybe add to this point as well is I think for the operators it's very important to get the right content to the right eyeballs. I mean, what I mean by that is in particular for paid TV operators and VOD stores. I mean, 80% of the purchase is done on the first page. So I think it's critical for operators as well what to bring on the starting page of their VOD library. And I mean, we have several operators working, you know, where they can decide at a certain point in time what should be on the starting page of a VOD. But then more and more of them actually now move into taking the TV behavior of the user through the clickstream on the set-top box or whatever, and then take this information to fill the start page with content from their VOD library. And the uptake and the difference in purchase numbers are dramatic.
Now, what I really like with recommendations, I like to see if the companies recommending to me are actually right. So that's kind of where I get the most kick out of it. Like, okay, what does Netflix think I'll like? And is Netflix even remotely close? Or what books does Amazon think I'll like? Well, that's a little bit more of a meta experiment. But it's kind of fun to see, just as a consumer and as an industry geek, wow, are these actually working? We've been talking about recommendations, which is sort of a natural segue. We've been hitting on Netflix a little bit. Netflix has just, you know, risen up and become this hugely powerful and influential company in all of our businesses. You know, it regularly regularly puts out earnings reports that astound Wall Street and just continues to grow. And I think this is a terrific example of a company that has really innovated and stayed ahead of the curve. And I believe there was an interesting statistic that just came out in the last few days that I think after 7 p.m. in the evenings, 50% of internet traffic is coming from Netflix. That Netflix streaming is no longer occurring just in the bubble, which is fascinating as people who live and work in the bubble. When something actually leaves the bubble, I think, wow, this is incredible. And it reminds me of debates that we would have a few years ago about Google. And, was Google a friend or foe to the media business? So that's what I want to get into a little bit right now. I'm going to start with you, Paul. Is Netflix the future of TV, and is Netflix a friend or a foe?
Thanks for calling on me for this one. So Netflix right now, Netflix is the trailblazer in this space. They are charting out the roadmap of how to create a successful online video content business, while not producing any of the content themselves, right? They're buying it, they're licensing it from other sources. Much akin to a cable network, right? Who licenses shows in syndication, which is effectively what Netflix is doing. It's back catalog stuff and putting it out there. And much like the syndication business is a huge part of the TV production business, because CBS, for instance, produces a show, they run it on CBS, they put it out on DVD, they set it into syndication, and now this has found money for them. They can sell it to Netflix or somebody else and make even more money on it. So that should create more sort of dollars in the ecosystem, better for the production companies. So that means more content. I would say that they have done such a good job of it. It's really attracted so much attention from other people who want to do the same types of things, right? So you've got Hulu Plus out there, which is backed by the networks. You've got Apple doing their thing, although they do kind of to own as opposed to a subscription service, but that could change. You've got Amazon out there, you've got Sony. I mean, you've got tons of people. So I'd say it's the market is so big, and the Netflix model is copyable. They have a big head start by others, that Netflix will become a, quote, channel out there amongst many, and you might subscribe to a handful, might subscribe to one or two. So I think they can be a friend of the TV industry if handled right, if the TV industry does non-exclusive, high-value deals with them that are at market rates.
Michelle, I'm going to go with you next, and then it looks like USC wants to answer too. And I guess also for you, Michelle, to kind of riff off of that, what have we learned from Netflix that is useful for your businesses, for the businesses of service providers, for networks, for programmers?
I agree with pretty much everything he's already said. I think we've learned a lot. A lot of people said that people wouldn't pay for subscription, and I'm also not saying anything that hasn't been said. This isn't. But it's proven that people will pay for subscription for content that's easy to get and they can easily access. What I find interesting about their recommendations is that they're definitely skewed towards the content that they want to push forward. Like, I never get recommendations for something that's brand new. But that's something that they're choosing because they have a lot of long tail content, so they can push their recommendations in that way. Over the long term, their challenge is going to be, can they continue to license at a reasonable rate and still provide the value? And I think we've all learned a lot from them, and I applaud them for that.
Yossi, what's your take?
Yeah, I think it's a great friend, and I can say this, that
because you can't say you're foul.
A few months ago, I was invited to present Ginny to the 8 CEOs of the US cable market. It's like walking into the Holy Temple. And then I asked them a simple question. What if one day 100% of the content is on demand? Netflix, okay? Is your guide ready for that? And the answer was no. Obviously, it was silent, so the answer is no. And I think this is the contribution of Netflix. Netflix makes everybody aware that for many years they neglected the video on demand. For many years, cable operators had video on demand service, and everybody complained about it because when you go into the genre-based classification, you click on comedy, you get 10,000 titles, and that's meaningless. Or drama, what does it mean, drama, action? So the operators did not care much about VOD. All of a sudden, Netflix actually taking their food. So Netflix made business out of video on demand, and now we, as discovery engines, we have to learn how to build guides that 100% is on demand. And I think this is an interesting challenge.
Audience, what are your burning questions about Netflix and its role in the industry? Does anyone want to throw out a question for one of our speakers? Harold.
So I absolutely agree that the Netflix model is clonable. The real question is the receipt side. You know, we've got one person, I'm a big Apple TV user, as I understand you are, and we've got Google TV and various other app stores. What about the receipt side? You know, are the standards in the receipt side or the viewer over-the-top box side going to get to a point where it's going to be accessible? And I use the example of the Apple TV as the best one, where it seems to be a closed infrastructure, even though Apple has been very successful in app stores on the iPad, the iPhone. They've decided to leave the Apple TV as a closed infrastructure. And is that something that's going to be a barrier to the consumer?
I'm going to throw that to Thomas.
I think it comes back to the question of Google. It's a matter of choice. I mean, you know, Apple TVs or iPad is as long successful as there is no alternative to it. I mean, coming back to, besides the user interface, I have to admit, but coming back to iTunes or, you know, to syncing one device to 2 or 3 laptops, it's a nightmare. And I think that's also why I mentioned before Google TV Hub or, you know, friend or foe. I think the point is it will be determined by the service providers, how quickly they innovate as well, because people just want to consume content and they want to find the content they're interested in. And if the operator doesn't provide it them, they will go elsewhere and they will find it elsewhere. And I think that's the key to success for anybody.
Let's talk about mobile phones. Does everyone here have one? I'm just kidding, of course you do. Does everyone here have a tablet? Who has a tablet? Who has an iPad? Yay. I don't. Somebody send me one? No, I'm just kidding. I can't take it. Or maybe I could. So the question that I want to get at here is, do tablets and cell phones replace TV? And that might sound like kind of crazy. But when I think about all of the things that we're doing on our mobile phones, I think about the fact that I went to, those of you who have children probably are dealing with this issue, but I went to an intro to middle school the other night because my son is going to be entering middle school, and I asked, you know, what's your policy on cell phones? Are they allowed to have them? God, I hope not, because I can't think of anything more irritating than kids taking out their cell phones during class. But, you know, the teacher brought up, the principal brought up a very good point that, well, they're not allowed to use them in class, but we can't prevent them from looking up something on the internet when they're in the bathroom, which just is sort of the point that we have this incredible portable thing that we can do so many things with and that we do everything with these days. Sean, you and I talked about this a little bit in advance. Do you think eventually, and this is not necessarily a today issue, I mean, we can talk 5 years down the road, but does the cell phone or the tablet start to replace the TV?
Well, I'll just talk from today. TVs have, as you guys all know, huge penetration. We're talking, there's 98%. I think this year there's 98.6% of all US households have a TV. 70% of them are digital TVs. So next year, they predict, will be the first year that TV penetration will drop to 96%. So they have just this huge footprint. And I think the consumer, you know, you look at the numbers, there's 286 million Americans who are watching upwards of 30 to 35 hours of TV every week. Those eyeballs aren't going away anytime soon. And on top of it, it's supported by a $70 billion advertising business. So, you know, I don't think, you know, everybody's saying everything's going to move away from the TV. I just don't see that happening anytime soon.
And of course, we have the upfronts going on this week in New York, where networks are unveiling all their new shows. Alex, what role?
Well, you know, we were just talking about Netflix, and folks may have seen that while, what is it? So, you know, iPads have dramatically outpaced Apple TV sales, about 15 million to 1. But that said, the Netflix viewing on let me get this straight, on Apple TVs still outpaces viewing on iPads. So I think, you know, that's still saying that, you know, the TV is where people are consuming their content. And will continue to do so. There's something about that, that living room experience. That said, I think the companion devices, as a lot of us call them, are being integrated into this multi-screen viewing experience. So there's so many use cases now for these or so many ways to use the phone to supplement the experience or the tablet. There's these incredible remote control apps, right, that the MSOs are coming out with, where you can leverage the processing power, you can leverage the tapping, the multi-touch interface of these devices to have a much more compelling experience than your traditional remote control. And that allows for rich UIs, that allows for things like search, as someone was saying, actual usable search, which is important when you're talking about all the content that's now available on TVs. There are of course, companion apps that people are coming out with to various shows, whether it's, the kind of more fun and entertaining apps. There's of course the social TV apps, whether it's social guides or social guide, or apps like Miso, Philo, the check-in apps, and of course just Twitter and Facebook, where people are having conversations around content or checking into content, where folks are learning about content. This is increasingly becoming again, folks' discovery mechanism for content, whether it's hearing about things via their own kind of friend network or the larger population. Yeah, and so there's just so many ways that folks are using their devices as part of their viewing experience now.
So it's a complementary type of thing. Paul, is Clicker on cell phones, and what sort of interplay do you see, or does one eventually supersede?
Clicker is on cell phones. We use it primarily as a way to sort of manage your content so that you can view it on larger platforms. Yes, you can view anything in Clicker on your cell phone that is allowed to play on that cell phone, which is frankly a very small subset of the content. When we first released our iPhone app and our Android app, got really shitty sucky reviews. Because everyone's like, it doesn't play anything. But that's kind of shooting the messenger. So, now we position it more as a complementary sort of management app. And I think that's the way it's going to trend. Now, more and more content is becoming available on phones and on tablets, and so they can sort of supplement television viewing. But when you think about it, it's awesome watching shows on your 60-inch, plasma that you got for $1,200 at Best Buy, and it's not as awesome watching on a 3-inch screen.
Viewing on the go is still going to happen. I'm not, I wasn't saying that. I mean, on the plane yesterday, it was amazing to me. I think literally 1 out of 2 people from Chicago to San Francisco was watching something on their tablet or even their phone. But as to Paul's point, one needs to know what content's out there. And by the way, for everyone's benefit, my name is Alex Vicati. I'm from Tribune Media Services, which actually basically offers the data behind entertainment information and also online video and OTT. A number of my co-panelists are customers, and I hope that you folks are too.
But it's interesting to think about, because I don't know if we anticipated the degree to which we would be doing the things that we're doing on our mobile phones today. I mean, I think a lot about the searching that occurs on mobile phones, and I think a lot about the fact, this is kind of a bit of a segue away from programming discovery right now, we think about the fact that a lot of brands and marketers haven't optimized their websites yet for mobile search. And I guess I wonder if that sort of surprise, the fact that they're not prepared, might portend anything that we should be concerned about in TV. Thomas.
I would like to emphasize a little bit also more on Paul's comment, saying I totally agree. It will expand actually the TV experience. I still can't see people gathering around an iPhone or an iPad, groups of people watching a 1.5-hour movie on the iPad. And I think one thing we sometimes forget in all the discussions about social TV, the TV set itself is actually the only social media where people socially watch TV. I mean, the rest about social TV is tweeting and these sort of things. But I would be interested in how much of the social TV interactions on the secondary screen or primary screen, whatever you would like to call it, really happens when you are a group of people. I think, and this is something...
Meaning if you're watching TV with other people, if you have
Correct.
friends over, is anyone bothering to tweet then?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's more when you're sitting in front of the TV on your own or in smaller groups or even in groups.
I want to give the audience a chance. If you guys want to weigh in some more, that's okay, but I want to give the audience a chance. Gentlemen, there.
I just wanted to add to the question about, is this going to replace TVs? No, it's not, no competition to the 60-inch piece of glass on the living room wall. But with the right adapter plugged into that little hole right there, this replaces your set top.
Yeah,
that's
I think
really
that's a difference.
the
I
change
mean,
that's
I think
coming.
it's going to be used as companion, but as technology advances, as the iPad projects a hologram that makes a 60-inch TV perfectly clear, that might be different. You take your iPad and you get that experience on the road, in the office, and school. Then it might, be more relevant at that time as the technology advances with the video cards.
But you're saying replace the set-top box in terms of people cord cutting.
Could that happen, Sean?
I love my cable. I'll never let it go. I'm a big sports fan. I watch, Arsenal soccer every single Sunday. It's worth the $150 I pay per month just for that alone. On top of it, I get to see all the HBO shows, all the shows that I like to see them first. And I think a lot of people just like to have the TV on. There's something about the linear experience of TV. When you look at the numbers and you see that people are watching 4 hours, up to 4.5 hours of TV a day, it's not because they're sitting in front of the TV necessarily and watching it, but the TV's on, you have CNN on, you have MSNBC on, and it's part of your life. So cord cutting to me, the data doesn't really support it yet. You're starting to see some of it, but I don't think it's there yet.
Can I add the mobile iPad and iPhone solving two problems for the operator. Problem number one, we get from the operator $2 remote control. So now we buy for $700 remote control, and obviously the operator now can do with what we purchased for $700 a much better service than what they gave us for $2. So it will be kind of useless if they will not take advantage of the fact that we paid $700. That's problem number one. Number two, set-top boxes lack authentication. Like you don't know who is sitting in front of on the TV. Now, when you have a personalized device such as iPhone and iPad, all of a sudden solutions like us can take full advantage of the fact. If you remember the old say from Wall Street Journal that TVOT thinks that I'm gay. So if you try to do personalization on average basis in front of the TV, then you get something which can be ridiculous. But once you start to do personalization on a mobile basis, then it can be far more accurate.
Okay, so what I want us to tackle next, kind of riffing off the whole idea of the set-top box and the mobile phone, and we've been talking about on-screen guides, is really the whole idea of, does the on-screen guide even matter anymore? In this world of social discovery and learning about things in, via word of mouth or recommendation engines or wherever we might find out about new shows that we're watching, assuming we are watching them on the TV. Michelle, I'm going to go ahead and start with you on this one. Does the on-screen guide matter? And if your answer is yes, convince the skeptics. That's mostly me, but convince me.
Wholeheartedly, yes. Now, the guides, as they exist right now, the majority of the time, we all know it was that thing we used to get in the paper on Sundays, and it was just slapped on the screen. Okay, that needs to go away. And you've seen some great examples today and yesterday of what some new guides are going to look like. Those are being deployed right now, and those are designed for the user experience. So the guide does matter. Now, the opportunity for cable, satellite, it's the end of the second day. IPTV providers is that they have the opportunity to continue to provide value between the television and the couch. If they can get these guides in place and they can provide good service, people are happy to pay for that service. If the subscribers can be given good programming and it can be delivered to them easily, that's good value and people will continue to pay the subscription.
Okay, I'm not convinced. I think, and Sean, I'm going to throw this one to you. I think we will learn about shows via social media and skip over the guide, and then when we're watching it on TV, go straight to that channel. I'm willing to be wrong. I don't care. I don't have any stake in being right. But that's that's what I believe. What's your take on the on-screen guide?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I started Social Guide is because I hated my TV guide. You know, just like you said, it's like looking at a newspaper on your TV. And there really hasn't been any change in the last 30 years in terms of what the cable companies have put in terms of a guide. It's a arcane numbering numeric system of 1 to 1,000. The only thing that's changed is the number of channels has increased. And that guide has caused huge problems. There's statistics that say that 50% of the people who own HD TVs don't even watch HD channels because they can't find them. So obviously, you know, that needs to change. And you know, with the second screen now, there's a lot of competition for what is the best way of finding something to watch. There's recommendations, and what we think is an interesting thing is knowing what are the most popular things on your TV right now as you watch TV. And that's what we're trying to create.
That's kind of interesting. Alex, you have skin in the game here.
Yeah. That said, you know, I will say that traditional newspaper schedule-driven guide matters less and less as there's more and more content, and as some folks, you know, time shift or catch up or what have you. But I still, you know, I still think there's important time component to certain content, as Sean was mentioning. You know, I want my timely sports and news and even, you know, to some extent, you know, reality TV shows and such. I think there's still a place for a welcome screen of sorts, a home screen. You know, as far as what I want as a consumer, I want it to be personalized. I want it to know the shows that I care about. I want it to know if my, you know, latest episode of something is going to expire. And I think it should kind of span everything from, you know, my DVR to what's available OTT to you know, what's coming up in linear broadcasting, so that it knows you know, an old episode of something is going to expire, or I may be interested in watching something but I haven't watched the previous episode, and then, you know, based on that and other data, you know, I love recommendations. So, you know, what else might I be interested in? What else should I watch? I want, again, that time-based component. Hey, these are upcoming events that are going to be of interest to you. You know, whether it's you know, whether it's football, whether it's you know, royal wedding, whether it's the last episodes of Oprah. That stuff, you know, that stuff matters. And then I think there's you know, there's a lot of opportunity for much better navigation with all this new technology and devices and such around kind of very traditional navigation, browse, search. I still want, I want really
will
good
this
search.
happen? See, now I agree with you. I love the idea of a smart guide
Yeah.
that you're talking about that kind of really knows you and guides you through it.
Yeah.
Is that really going to happen, though?
A lot of it is data-driven. I know that, you know, our company can offer a lot of the data that can power guides like this today. There are some challenges that come up from you know, from the operators or the box makers. Then, as Yossi was mentioning, you know, for example, if this is a guide on a box, well, who is that person? You know, do we have this notion of profiles? And, you know, if my kid watches the television and I start having, you know, Disney and Nickelodeon recommendations, I'm not going to be happy about that.
Oh,
so,
Netflix is convinced all I watch is Garfield, Pet Rescue, and Phineas and Ferb.
Right. So, you know, there are challenges to the execution, certainly, but I think the industry can certainly start moving in this direction. I think the industry is moving to look at what they need to offer in the guide beyond time-driven data.
Clicker has got to have a point of view on this.
We do, in fact. So, you know, agree with a lot of the panelists on this one. We all seem to think that what is out there is archaic and it's ripe for innovation. So the fly in the ointment is that everybody uses, well, all of us who have cable or satellite, which is most of us, our guide is the one that comes with the box, right, that we put in there. And these guys haven't touched that thing in, you know, 20 years. It's like the same.
I feel like we've been promised that it would be better, though, right?
Yeah, it's bad. And I don't know, Michelle, earlier you were suggesting that consumers might pay for a better experience, if I got that right, but the great TiVo experiment is something that I think we should point out, where TiVo came out, way better experience than what Comcast can provide, right? But they want to charge me $5 a month for that, and I got to pay $200 or $300 or whatever for the box. So I don't do it, right? I take the crappy experience at Comcast because it gets the job done, even though for another $200 plus $5 a month, I can get the better experience at TiVo. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. What could change things is as more assets become video on demand assets, then the television manufacturers who are putting up this welcome screen, this guide, this, they have their widgets for Netflix and Crackle and Hulu Plus and all that kind of thing. They can build a better experience, and hopefully that kicks Comcast and Time Warner in the ass and they get their act together.
Thomas.
I mean, I can't talk obviously for the US, but in Europe, it certainly is happening. I mean, all the customers we're working with they have actually two primary goals to use recommendation engines and content discovery engine is, first of all, to simplify, and I think that's the key word, is to simplify the VOD library they have, but also to simplify the guide. As you said, it hasn't been touched for the last 20 years. I mean, we have a solution out there hitting the market soon where, for example, the rec engine filters out, out of your 300, 400, 500 channels, the shows which are relevant to you or particularly on a set-top box for the household. And then where you can actually hit the button and then only flip through those content items which are of interest for you. So you narrow down the guide from, let's say, about 300 channels from 30 to 40 pages down to 1, maybe 2 pages. And then people start appreciating the guide again. And at a certain point in time, I mean, companion devices, again, are very nice and they will help to find the right content and anything, but at a certain point in time, you want to sit back, you want to relax, you want to use just the arrow buttons to navigate, and then those simplified guides definitely have a future.
Audience. Oh, questions, okay. Hello.
I'm almost embarrassed I'm from Comcast, Walt Michael. I mean, I work in kind of two different groups. I mean, a lot on the innovation side, but I'm working with the ITER group, which is very focused on consistent identification of entertainment assets, whether they be movie or broadcast, as well as within the cable as metadata group. And I guess in order for you guys to work, I mean, eventually, when you look at social media, whether you look at content discovery engines, recommendation engines, I think subscribers are going to want to choose the tools they're going to want to use to discover content, and subscribers are going to interact socially amongst themselves, but without a consistent identification model, none of your tools can interoperate, and we continue to live within silos. So can you comment on ITER and or other standards or specifications we should be driving towards to unify all of you guys sitting up here on the panel?
Anyone you want to address that to in particular?
I expect them, I mean, I would expect all of you wanting to interoperate with my platforms.
Michelle, you raised your hand first.
Yeah, well, first off, the work that Tribune does, they're one example of a data provider, absolutely essential to what we provide. If there's not data about the content, half of the problem for us is we can't even address it. We have to know what the data is, and then we need to know about the subscriber, and we need to match those up. So the data is very important. And then the second part about the silos, we do have the ability in our engine to use linear data, VOD data, music data even for one of our customers, and we can combine the recommendations across all of them. Now that is a data exercise, but that will become increasingly easier with, as Tribune continues to increase and expand theirs and others do as well.
Mr. Yossi.
I think this is an excellent question, but I think it touches two elements. One element is really the asset identification, is just to make sure that we speak one language. But I would add one more angle, and I would use the term lingua franca, which means common language. I think one of the challenges that we consumers face, that from content consumption, whether I go to the cinema, Netflix, Comcast, or anywhere, somehow I would like to look at the content and to discover it with one kind of language. And today, the only classification that's available for us is genre. And again, I think that's completely insufficient. In a way, the industry needs, again, lingua franca, which is a classification to define the theme, the plot, the mood, the structures, the way we talk about content.
Alex, standards.
Well, yeah. This is what Tribune Media Services does, right? Commercially, is identify video assets. And I actually came to Tribune Media Services by way of an acquisition of my startup, Cast TV, which was focused on the online video world. So identifying, this kind of along the lines of Clicker and Video, identifying all these videos that are out there, saying that these videos may actually be copies of episodes of TV shows that are associated with networks and airtimes and so on and so forth. And so now, what we've done since the acquisition of Cast TV by Tribune Media Services is map and match those two things, the online video world to these canonical TMS IDs. And so, we've got over 4,000 customers and across all, all areas of this industry who are now able to cover, this world of video content, whether it's linear or OTT or VOD.
And I would like to add this. This was one of the key problems actually when we pitched our recommendation engine to the operators. So what we did is we added also metadata to the delivery which we deliver to our operators. And with metadata, I mean something like Tribune Media is providing, but cross over all the platforms. So it's linear, it's VOT, it's selected on-demand platforms. And the second thing I think which is vital in this equation is you also have other let's say algorithms working in recommendation engines today. Not every algorithm is now metadata or classification based. So you can also for those items where not high quality metadata or metadata at all is available, you can use other algorithms which are not metadata based to overcome the problem.
This is a perfect segue into what is going to be the last question that I pose to the panelists, and then if we have a few more minutes, we'll have a free-for-all for questions if that works for everyone. Brandon, I'm going to throw this one to you to start with, just because I want to give our audience a chance to hear from you again. But I want to talk a little bit in sort of a perfect segue from the Comcast question: is are service providers, are they the gatekeepers anymore of programming discovery? So this is sort of another agree, disagree point.
Yeah, I still think that the gatekeepers, like we've alluded to, TV consumption on the service providers is an all-time high. Content in the end is the key. Really the user, all they want to do is get to that content and watch it. Will they be distributed in different forms? Probably, but they are the majorly owner of the content that everyone wants to find. So at this point, yeah, they are.
Sean, do you see that changing at all in the future, even 5
I
years down the road?
I think it's going to evolve and integrate all the things we're working on. And I think just like Netflix is enhancing innovation, they're going to start integrating the things that we're doing. They're enhancing it, but they're always going to be the gatekeeper for sure because they do own most of the content.
Sean?
Yeah, I think there'll be less of the gatekeeper as we continue over the next 5 years. Right now, I think the numbers are definitely in their favor. If you just look at the numbers of people watching TV and how much they're watching. But with all of the options that are coming out, just in the last year, I, now am devoted to my Apple TV. I'm buying movies on iTunes. I see all of my friends doing the same thing. And Netflix as well. I'm constantly now looking at Netflix more. So I think the amount of content that we're consuming is growing, and the number of providers that are able to, be the gatekeepers is growing as well.
Paul, I saw you taking notes, so I can't help but wonder if it's related.
Yeah.
Or it's memo, pick up milk on the way home tonight.
No, look, when you think of my habits and those of probably the industry at large, for something that's a closed system like cable is right now, there's only one gatekeeper to my television right now, and that's Comcast, because that's all I can get in my apartment. We're not even allowed to put a dish on the roof, so that's out. But start layering on other services. So you have on-demand stuff. You've got Netflix. You've got Hulu. You've got all these there's web content, frankly, and that's not touched by Comcast. So I think there is an opportunity for a meta layer on top of all these discrete services that connects into them, and has a unified queue, unified recommendations. You can access DVR, can change your channel on your TV, all these types of things. So I think there's hopefully room for innovative, web players or software companies to get one layer above what are right now closed silos.
I would like to add. Actually, I give a lot of future for connected TVs. I think connected TVs, if you look at the Motorola and Cisco, they're kind of upset because they're losing a lot of business because the set-top box business is declining. So who is going to take that business of the set-top boxes? So that's the connected TV guys. And if the connected TV guys will do a good job and they will have a guide and incorporating both pay TV and over the top, they stand a good chance to disrupt what we are so used to for the past 50, 60 years.
Alex, do connected TVs
I agree.
become
I was going to make
do they
Yossi's
become
point, actually.
the gatekeepers then? Is that a possibility?
Well, I think the interesting thing is that folks are challenging the MSOs being the gatekeepers, and whether it's connected TVs or whether it's folks challenging how far the rights of the MSOs extend with the Time Warner Cable and Cablevision experiments on the iPads, where they made the subscription service available to, or they made their services available to their subscribers on iPads, and then certain networks challenged that. So the networks and content owners want OTT to be a different licensing opportunity for them. They don't necessarily think that the MSOs just automatically get the rights to that. So there are definitely some really interesting turf wars that are going to happen. And of course, the folks who can who can get that first access to the consumer when that consumer is sitting down to watch content is going to have a lot of new and interesting opportunities from advertising on down.
I'm going to let Michelle answer, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience.
Yeah, just a quick addition. I think gatekeeper has a negative connotation, and I really believe that this is an opportunity for cable, satellite, IPTV to step up, provide more services. We only go other places when we're not getting what we want. And so if you could get all your movies and everything through your cable or satellite provider, you'd probably just do it there. I love Apple. Well, Apple has a little bit unique.
Look at how many apples we have here in the audience too. You're in San Francisco when you look around and see all these Macs.
But I think that's the right answer. I mean, to have my consumer hat on, I would want the service provider to be the gatekeeper, because then it means actually that they provide all the services I'm requiring, all the content I'm asking them to provide me. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to have an Apple TV, a Google TV, a Comcast box, a laptop connected to my TV. First of all, I don't have so many HDMI ports in my TV. Right. But at the end of the day, you want to have one remote control, you want to have one connected TV or set-top box. I think it doesn't really matter what the form factor is. But you just want to interact with one device and consume the content you're interested in.
And have one phone number to call if there's a problem.
That's true. We have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to keep that to questions. I have a question from Harold, and then actually I'm going to let the gal in the red go first because she hasn't asked a question yet.
I just wanted to know what role advertising had in a world of user-based and personalized TV and just watching.
That's a great question, and we haven't addressed that. Yeah, what role is advertising going to play in all of these recommendations, personalized TV, programming discovery? Sean, I'm going to hit you up for that one.
I'm a startup. I think I'm the last person.
Okay, you don't get to answer. Who wants to answer?
I would like to take that one, because that was one of the fundamental questions we had as well before we came up with our venture, is kind of what's the monetization strategy. And we had quite intense discussions with also within Philips. And one of the points is personalization definitely is the gate also to find new business models, particularly targeted advertisement, but also pay TV content. So we added actually one module which we're selling next to recommendation and metadata is targeted advertisement services, where we even offer turnkey services to our partners. To give an example there, we just launched a set-top box in Europe, where we even offer a rev share to the set-top box manufacturer on the targeted advertisement when we monetize their service. Meaning, normally when they sell a set-top box and it's free to our market, they're heavily used. Through retail, the first time they normally hear something back from the device is when there is a problem with it. In our case, they now also can monetize through targeted advertisement. They can, eat up a pile of the cake, which they never actually had access to before. So I think it's a fundamental part of monetization, recommendation, and targeting technology.
I love ads. Harold?
I would like to add in this context that one term that keeps surfacing again and again is psychographic, which means it's a logical match between the content you're watching and the advertisement. And the best example to understand it, that if you're watching the movie Titanic, maybe the best advertisement could be for life insurance, because your mindset is completely captured with a disaster. So any product or any story that has some kind of disaster part of it, you will make sure that you will remember that.
I was watching the movie Source Code recently. It was a little bit depressing. Like, I could have, used a happy ad if they had ads before the movies. Harold.
So, it's Brandon. Sorry, no. Who's the guy next? Paul. Paul, I want to come back. Earlier on we talked about the silos and the unavailability of metadata of content, and that was one of the failings of Google TV. You talked about being able to search across platforms. What's two parts of the question? Number one is, what's the barrier to that happening? And Yossi had the opinion that was a simple problem to resolve. Why hasn't it been resolved yet?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't think there are strong barriers in the way of searching across different silos, as long as you've done two steps. One is indexed all the content inside of each of those silos, and two, matched it up, right? To the guy from Comcast asked
Both
about...
Both of which are actually non-trivial problems.
No, I know, but if you're... Sorry, when you said barrier, I immediately thought this can't be done, when in fact, that's what several of our companies have done and do. And we can then take this index of, we know that Ghostbusters is a movie, it's on linear TV at this time, it's in Crackle for free, it's on iTunes for, $4, and, we have all those indices already, and, we're trying to, at least we are trying to, work with these different platforms to use our stuff.
But I'm going to challenge that, and I'm going to use Daisy's example of Parks and Recreation. So Parks and Rec is, seasons 1, 2, and 3 are on Netflix. Season 4 is going to be up for grabs pretty soon, and it might go to another service. Why would Netflix make their database accessible to a platform that then says it doesn't matter who NBC sells the rights to season 4 of Parks and Rec to?
So they're the trickiest one right now, because they're the market leader, and so they think, so if I'm a connected TV user and I hit the smart TV button, and I go to the, say, Samsung smart TV home screen, I'm going to click Netflix, and I'm going to search in there first because they have the best brand. But as more and more of these currently siloed content sources come online, the manufacturers like Samsung are going to want there to be some kind of universal search. Everyone aside from Netflix might want to participate in that, and Netflix could say, well, leave me out. But then suddenly Netflix isn't going to get any, universal search traffic. So I think that they're going to, loosen, we hope they're going to loosen the reins over time. And currently I know that some of the connected TV guys have gotten that approval from Netflix to do that.
So we have to, I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt, but we have to wrap it up because I want to keep the next panel on time. I want to thank everybody for coming. I am rushing off stage, so anybody that was planning on asking me a question, please feel free to email me. My website is daisywhitney.com. I love to interact with attendees. If you have ideas, anything you want to riff off of, please, I welcome you to reach out and to buy my book there. And I also just want to thank all of my wonderful panelists. You guys did a great job. Thank you so much, and thank you for the great questions. Thank you, Tracy.